and welcome back to another video. So today's Monday, which means it is another sketchbooking video day, and I thought today I would actually just do something a little bit more on the simple side. I initially had plans of doing some sort of painting video, but I felt a little bit more tired recently and just kind of ran out of time to kind of block out a section of time for me to just do a non-stop painting. So today, it might be a little bit hard to see right now, but I do have a few sketches already done on this little spread, and I'm using the High-Tech Coletto 5, which is like a multi-pencil, and I'm using kind of like a light blue lead. But to kind of like finish off these sketches, I'm going to be using ballpoint pens. So I've had these Papermate Inkjoy pens. I have like several different types of these ones in particular, but they come in like various colors, like I think it's dark blue, light blue, yellow, there's a purple, there's like a pink, there's green, a dark green, an orange, a black, and a red. I believe that's kind of like the range of colors. So almost like 10 colors, I believe. But I thought it'd be fun to just pick out 3 and almost start from the lightest color that I've chosen and working our way up to the darkest one. So for the color palette that I chose and the character that I'm drawing today, so because I am drawing my OC Selwin once again, I thought the kind of like orange color, a light blue, and a dark blue would actually fit the best. I was debating on what I wanted the final color to be. I was already set that I was only going to use 3, just because like the type of method that I was going to do is going to be a lot of like back and forth, and I didn't want to pick too many just to layer up. So we're going to start with yellow, even though I believe the light blue might be just like a smidge maybe on the lighter side compared to my yellow, but the yellow pen is kind of running out, so I rather use it as the base for now, and then we can start to layer up and darken as we move along with our blues. So the other options that I could have used for my third color, in kind of like in place of the dark blue, would have been either the purple or black. So Selwyn's color palette is more so kind of closer to like dark blue for parts of his outfit, his hair, even part of like his eye color. So I didn't really want to use black if I didn't have to. And then purple felt a little bit too, I don't know, a little off for the color palette, even though like this yellow is more like of an orange. So in color theory, it would be more contrasting and kind of like, you know, complementary color to purple. But I kind of just felt it might have been easier just to stick with the dark blue, and maybe we can try to treat it more as a very subtle, or not so subtle, gradation with like a little bit of warmth that comes from our orange color. So like I mentioned, our first like pass or our first layer of ballpoint pen that I'm going to be working with is the kind of like orangey color, and I am coloring on top of my light blue sketch. I was debating on whether or not I was going to use like my red or pink or like kind of a softer darker blue that I could have used for the sketch, but because I initially was just gonna do ballpoint pen just throughout the entire piece of like the sketch, I thought the blue would just mix in nicely with the rest of the blues. But because I kind of like switched gears and ended up doing a bit more of 3 colors instead, I hope it doesn't like look too weird that so much of the blue is going to be popping through. I do go back in a little bit later and erase some of those lines, but for the most part, I think I do like the color palette for this because of certain areas of Selwyn's does require to be a little bit more on the warmer side, and it's kind of nice to have that orange color. And then as we start to darken things up and start to layer up our colors, you can kind of see like the orange kind of like mixes with my light blue and then really intensifies once I start adding in the dark blue, and it almost leans towards like a black in some areas if I layer up all 3 together. So that's what I'm going to try my best to rely on as I'm building up Selwyn. I'm going to put like a little image on the screen because I saw this one on Pinterest and it kind of sparked the idea of layering these stars in this manner. I know it doesn't look like a direct correlation, but sometimes this is how my brain works when I see like artwork or drawings or anything like that on Pinterest. It just like pops an idea in my brain, but doesn't have like a one-to-one correlation. But this one, I just really liked how the composition and the flowers that kind of like resemble stars fit in kind of like the color comp, as well as just the way how they kind of pop forward. Now, I tried my best to look up where the artist was because there was like a little signature, and obviously Pinterest is never the best place to kind of like find the actual source of the drawing because there's a lot of reposts of other people's artwork on there. So I did a reverse Google image search and I think I found the artist, but I could not find this specific piece on their Twitter. So I'm not too sure 100% that it is, but it seems like their name more or less matches. And I think there's another piece that has a very similar character to the one that I'm referencing, at least like of the image that I found on Pinterest. So I'm almost like 99% sure it's the same artist. But as I was looking through their gallery, it just made me more motivated again that I really want to do more watercolor painting. So I need to scratch that itch eventually, hopefully this week. So either do a little bit of gouache or do some watercolor painting. If I do watercolor, I probably will do it on like a watercolor block or watercolor paper. While if I do it in gouache, I'll just do it in the sketchbook like I did with the Dan Hung piece from last week, which I kind of wanted to do gouache for like today's session, but like I mentioned, I could not find the time to block out enough time for me to have like an uninterrupted painting session. Otherwise, like sometimes I do lose motivation more easily because I feel like I've been working on a piece for way too long. So we'll kind of see, because I do have like a character or person that I really want to paint, and their color palette's like very much on the soft side, so I kind of want to attempt that. I've talked about it in previous videos wherever I do like painting or like especially with gouache, that I often make things darker or have more contrast and it loses kind of like that soft airiness that I like from watercolors or like just my sketch in general. So maybe if I tackle that one with a very light kind of like it's cream kind of softer brown color palette, then maybe we can use that as an opportunity just to test and see whether or not I can kind of like execute it. But on to Selwin. So I've already switched over to our light blue pencil and I'm kind of just going over some areas with the orange just to layer up another layer so that once we add in our dark blue, I will push those ones more to the forward and make dark blue kind of like our background-ish color for some of these areas. But also, one of the places that I really wanted to focus on with like layering up and kind of seeing how these ballpoint pens kind of mesh is in the eyes, which I already really liked how the blue interacted with the orange. So I did my best to keep some of the orange like areas untouched so that they are pure orange. And then I have some areas that were layered up with the blue, which kind of turned like a greeny color. But I kind of wish I left a little bit more of areas where I could have just had the pure blue in his eyes rather than having that mixed orangey green color come through. It's not like the worst, but it would have been nice to just have a little bit of that pop of blue like I have in his hair currently, and you'll see it a little bit more once we layer up our final color on top. But the thing that I like about mixing ballpoint pens like this, and I've done some of these like in the past, but much more on like a smaller scale, and I think I did them more like of 2 colors only. So these colors do kind of remind me a little bit more of Akemi, because I remember I used definitely kind of like the lighter blue and the orange to do his sketches at some point. I don't really remember if I ended up doing like the exact same color palette and use 3 colors where I've used the dark blue to kind of tie everything together, add as much contrast, because Akemi's hair is on the lighter side, so maybe I only did 2 colors, which is like the orange and the light blue. Who knows? But I have done this like in the past before, which is why I'm not like too worried about how I wanted to layer up everything. Even though like I mentioned, there are some areas that I wish was not kind of like touched by the orange so that I could have the blue just be purely its own color, and it kind of gives a little bit more of that vibrancy rather than getting a little bit more green and muddied from having the layer underneath. So if you have like a bunch of ballpoint pens that you have like different colors of or whatever, then I highly recommend giving this a go. Like try to come up with a bunch of different like color combinations. I think I've done probably a color combination that had like the yellow, or not the yellow, I guess like the orange color that I'm using right now. I used I think the light green and the dark green together, and I've used the pink, red, and purple together as well, and maybe like pink, purple, and the dark blue. So there's like a few combinations you can definitely work with when you're working with these kinds of like colored ballpoint pens. But moving along, we are kind of on our last pass, or our last layer, I guess, of ballpoint pen. So I pulled out the dark blue, and I've mentioned probably in the past that like whenever I do something with like color or sketching, I do like to add contrast and darken certain like lines up. So I think it works very effectively, especially in his eyes. They appear a little bit more towards like black for like the upper lash line, some of the edges, but I didn't want to intensify it too much because I didn't want to lose too much of the blue, like the light blue that I had initially laid down. So I kind of just did the upper portion of his eye, and then I kind of left everything else as is, and then started to really build up his hair, because his hair, out of like, other than I guess his sweater and maybe his shoes, is probably the darkest area in his entire color palette. So I really wanted to focus on trying to push it as much as I could. And you can kind of see that I did not add too much orange into his hair. I already knew that it was going to be a little bit muddier because the orange is like, I don't know, probably not the best color to layer up with blue, because they are kind of like on opposite sides more or less. Or like if it's like a yellowy orange, then they're going to be very neutralized or muddier looking. So because of that, it's not going to turn out like super green, even though like that was a worry of mine that I was going to have, that maybe I was going to make everything look a little too green. But luckily, adding all the colors together just kind of pushed it to a really dark value, and I was able to layer up the blue quite nicely on its own as well with dark blue, so I don't really mind what it looks like. When I was layering up the stars, I was struggling on what I was trying to make them look like. So my idea was that if I did a first pass with orange and then I would leave some areas with have white, I think this is kind of more effective in the second drawing that I do, so maybe I'll explain it a little bit more there. But I wanted to layer it so that as we get further and further back, it'll kind of like get darker and darker, so that our lightest color, which hopefully would be the white of the page, will be right at the very front and hopefully create a little bit of that depth. I think it kind of worked a little bit in his hair, but it works most effectively, I think, on the second drawing that I'll do, which I'll do the exact same method. It's just a little bit different. I just wanted to really layer up stars for that one. But as we're working on kind of like darkening things up, I do a lot of back and forth of reintroducing. Like you can see I'm using the light blue again. I'll go back in and use orange to layer up, and then we can go kind of like, you know, switching between each color to make sure that I have like an equal pass of whatever color that I need, or if I want to fill in more of the area so that we have a little bit less of white showing through, then I can do that. But I kind of like the lines or the hatchiness maybe of the look of it, so I didn't really go back and forth in a very like uniform manner. I kind of did like one direction and then I'll switch to a different direction, and if they happen to cross hatch, then I'll just let it happen. But I think that's pretty much it for this little, I guess it's the larger drawing of Selwin. But then I went ahead and moved on to the second drawing, which is going to be on the second page. I don't really like separating my sketchbook pages like this too much. I like working in a spread so that I can have my sketches not be too restricted to a very, I guess like if I'm working on a 5x7 sketchbook, which is roughly the size of this particular one, I don't want to have all my sketches be restricted to like either a very horizontal composition or a very vertical composition. So allowing myself to kind of go across the entire spread alleviates that restriction for me, because I'm allowing myself to let things just like cross between the middle seam of the sketchbook. So even though I didn't really do it that much for this one, I wasn't like letting myself make it strictly for like, oh, I need the large Selwin to be on the left hand side and like strictly on this one page, and then the smaller one to be on the right side on its own, even though I did kind of want to have this one a little bit more isolated, but it was not like my initial plan, because you can kind of see Selwyn's hair peeping through from the left side anyways onto the right page. But back to this drawing. So this one, I did end up adding a lot more orange, I feel like, to his sweater-ish area, because it is on the warmer side in terms of like his entire color palette. So I wanted to incorporate that as much as I could before I started to add in our light blue and then eventually our dark blue. I think the light blue is a little bit less prominent in this one because how much the orange actually shines through, because I didn't layer it as much to kind of like avoid that kind of muddier green color, but I will add a lot more contrast once we start to add in the dark blue ballpoint pen. So kind of like while I'm layering that up, I might go on a little bit of a tangent. how's everyone's like October drawing challenge if you're participating in one, or if you're like thinking of participating in one in November? Because I know some people like doing Huevember instead, or maybe there's another challenge. I'm not too sure if there's one like other than Huevember that people do in the month of November. Maybe there is, but I'm kind of shocked of how fast October kind of flew by. It did make me panic a little bit that felt a little bit rushed to do a lot of my OC-tober drawings. I know it's mostly like a mental thing for myself, and probably because I wanted to do other drawings or other activities, but I feel like sometimes I had to get my OC-tober out of the way before I could do that. Or if I kind of like leave OC-tober towards the end of the day, then I feel like I'm trying to rush it before midnight to kind of fulfill that quota. Because I think when I've recorded videos for the OC-tober for that specific day, I often do them after midnight, but I think there was only 2 times that I've done it after midnight rather than some like time throughout the day, if that makes sense. So in the past, I would always like pre-sketch a lot of the prompts. Let's say I would sketch like 10 days, and then after midnight rolls, I would actually work on my Inktober, and then later on throughout the rest of the day, I don't really have to worry about it. I think it's mostly because I will have more time to work on it without having interruptions, as well as I usually get like a second wind of energy after, I don't know, even after midnight, which isn't like the greatest, because even right now, I'm trying to like fix my sleep schedule. I've been sleeping around like 4 to 5 a.m. and it's really bad. So I'm trying to curve it back to around 2 a.m. because I feel like physically my body accepts that, but 5 a.m. is too much. I've been getting headaches more like recently, so it might be due to that. So I'm gonna try to curve it back. But because of that, I haven't been really doing my OC-tobers during that time, like right after midnight rolls around for that day. So instead, I've been doing it throughout the day, and occasionally I'll do it like right before midnight, which might be a bad habit for me because that's when I feel the most rushed. Yeah, I'll probably do like a whole recap video, part of like a Monday video, to talk about the OC-tober, and maybe I'll go through them or something, because there's like illustrations or like drawings that I really like, and then you can tell which ones that I either disliked or I didn't spend enough time on. So I'll definitely go through those probably the Monday following Halloween, I think. If not, maybe it'll be like a Wednesday video or something, because I still want to make a clay figurine of Flynn's, or even like Selwin. I'm gonna kind of sketch it out in my sketchbook maybe today and figure it out so that I can actually start the clay making process, or like the figurine making process, and then I can bake him, and then we can like sand him. I'm gonna add like paint primer, and then I'm gonna paint him, and hopefully that's it. Oh, and add a varnish. But yeah, I kind of miss making like little chibi figurines, even though like sculpture and like 3D is never my strong suit. But I want to knock that project out of the way, and then I'll focus all my time and energy into making an actual like 10 centimeter plush of Selwyn, so that he can go with my Masaki and Kaisen on my shelf. I didn't really talk about this drawing too much in terms of like visually what I'm doing. So, or not what I'm doing, why I wanted to draw this one. I've always drawn flowers and stuff obscuring the face. I've also done like traditional Chinese patterning obscuring the face back in like my uni days, alongside with like symbolism of flowers for I think my 3rd and 4th year. Or no, maybe it's just my 4th year during my uni days. But I thought, because I do associate Selwyn a little bit more with like twinkling things, let's say stars, sparkles, all that stuff. So instead of doing flowers for him and obstructing his face that way, I ended up just doing stars. I was debating whether or not I was gonna maybe choose a birthday for him and try to do a constellation to obscure his face, or like to add somewhere into the drawing, but I don't want to commit to giving him a birthday quite yet. Technically, I think out of all my OCs, Masaki and Koji are the only ones I've given birthdays, but I've never actually like fully remembered it. I believe Masaki is in May and Koji is in December. So I might have to go through my old sketchbooks and try to figure out when their birthday was. I'm pretty sure Masaki was when the first time I posted him onto my Instagram, and his color palette looks like slightly off because I made him much more on the cooler side rather than on the warmer side. So I might have to do a little bit of digging and try to assign Selwin, and maybe the rest of my OCs like a birthday. And maybe next year I'll keep up and draw birthday illustrations for each of them. But I think that's pretty much the end of today's little sketching session. And I've had a lot of fun just working with this color palette. I might have to see if I have another like orange color because this one's definitely running out. It wasn't as strong as I was working on the drawing on the right hand side, but it kind of worked out anyways. But this is kind of like the final look of the spread. I really like the colors a lot. I might want to push the kind of blue, like the light blue, a little bit more next time if I want to use this color palette once more. Also, I mentioned that I ended up using a kneaded eraser to get rid of some of the blue stray lines just because it was kind of bothering me, even though like you guys can't really see it. So these are the 3 colors that I ended up using today, and I'll quickly pop in the other colors that I own. I am missing red from this set. I don't know where it is, but I have like another set of ballpoint pens as well. Not here, so I might have to go fetch them. So maybe I'll use like a different color combination in the future. But yeah. Oh, also, side note, this is why I like to put a piece of paper in between my sketches if I'm using graphite or any dry medium, because I've accidentally imprinted that little pencil sketch onto my gouache danang. So yeah, I need to remind myself not to do that. So yeah, I think that's it for today. I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye bye!